This is the new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, and it can do a lot of stuff. It's a pretty capable off-roader. It's a huge family SUV, and with an $85,000 price tag, it's a pretty nice luxury experience too. Today, I'm going to review the new Expedition Tremor and show you all of its quirks and features. If you're listing a car on Cars and Bids, you want the best possible result, and that starts with presentation. I always tell our community that ceramic made simple is the way to go. Mothers has formulated these products for fanatics, meaning you get professional grade results that are incredibly user-friendly. You don't need a professional detailer to get that deep gloss. It's affordable, it's accessible at basically any auto parts store, and it's the single best way to add curb appeal to your auction listing before you hit that submit button. Visit mothers.com to find out more and to purchase Mothers products. All right, time for the quirks and features of the new Ford Expedition Tremor, and I'll start with a little overview. The Expedition has been Ford's full-size, large family SUV for almost 30 years now, except for a little period in the early 2000s when they came out with the even larger Excursion. For the 25 model year, the Expedition has been, let's call it, thoroughly refreshed. It has new styling, it has a completely new interior, new technology, but it's not a total redesign because it has the same chassis and the same powertrains as before. Now, on the outside, the new Expedition is updated with an overall design that's modernized to look more like other new Ford models. You can especially see that in the grille, which sort of matches what you have on the latest F-150 and the Ranger, along with the tall front end, front hood design, very similar to other Ford trucks and SUVs. Other than that, a fairly similar look to the outgoing Expedition model. Things just kind of tightened up a little bit, refreshed, improved, except in back, where they've done something a bit strange. That's where you can see the tailgate is black on the upper half, and then body color on the lower half. Now that black upper tailgate is regardless of what color Expedition you get. White or blue or silver, you got a black upper half of the tailgate, which is certainly odd. And it's also weird that it includes some lighting elements within the black on the tailgate itself, not just on the pillars on the outside. Certainly a bit of an odd look back there. But they've done that, I think, to emphasize a fantastic new feature that the new Expedition has, which is the tailgate is now split. And that means you open the tailgate, the upper part opens, and there is a lower part that sort of sticks around. You open that separately, and it drops down to the bottom so that you can sit on it. You can have a picnic or a tailgate or hang out on the back of your Expedition split tailgate, which is a wonderful idea. A lot of SUVs had this in years past. It almost completely went away, and now it's been resurrected here and in the new Lincoln Navigator, which is kind of the luxury version of this. And it's even better than just a regular old split tailgate because there's a cool innovative feature. You lift up the cargo area floor, and there's this plastic panel that you can adjust to do various different things. For instance, you can install it in the cargo area to be tiered storage, so you have 2 levels of cargo storage, which is pretty cool. Or you can install it as a seat behind the lower tailgate, and you can actually have a backrest here for when you're sitting tailgating in a parking lot or a beach or wherever you are. It's a pretty cool feature, the split tailgate with this kind of multi-purpose panel. I love it. But anyway, more on the quirks of the cargo area later. Next, we'll move back outside where there's more to cover. Specifically, I want to go over some Tremor upgrades over the standard Expedition. Probably the most important on the outside is the tires. You can see 33-inch all-terrain tires intended to make this a force off-road. You also have these side steps, which are like grated in the center. They have these little cutout grates to make it easier to hose them off. They're full metal. They say Ford. They're very serious pieces. Now, the Tremor also has something a little less serious, which is its gold trim, intended to emphasize its capability. You can see it up front where it actually looks kind of cool. The weird part is on the wheels, where you can see they have painted 1 spoke gold on each wheel, I guess to draw attention to the Tremor situation. It is certainly a little bit odd, but that gold trim is kind of the special color for the Tremor, and it appears throughout, like I'll show you later. later. More importantly than some of these exterior upgrades, the latest Expedition Tremor, which replaces the previous off-road version, the Timberline, we now have a locking rear differential in the Tremor. You can see the button right here, rear locker, which is impressive for off-road use. There was also a low-range four-wheel drive gear. You can see that here. And there are a couple of other off-road special features. One is called Trail Control, which is sort of an off-road cruise control system. And there's also a feature called Trail Turn Assist, which allows the vehicle to lock one of the rear wheels completely and make it kind of pivot around a stopped rear wheel, which shortens its turning radius on trails where you might have kind of a tight switchback. A pretty cool idea. And there's more. All new Expedition models come standard with a twin-turbo V6, but in the lesser models, that powertrain makes 400 horsepower. However, in the upper trims, including the Tremor, you get a 440 horsepower version of that engine, so an extra 40 horses in the Tremor, which actually makes it pretty quick. Supposedly, this will do 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds, which is really incredibly fast for a full-size giant luxury SUV of this heft, motivated by this pretty powerful engine. And since we're talking about the versions, let's talk pricing. The new base model 25 Expedition starts around $65,000. It's an expensive truck even in its base model entry-level version. This one, the Tremor, is around $84,000, and the top luxury model, the King Ranch, is around $86,000. So the Tremor and the King Ranch cost about the same. You kind of have to decide at that price point if you want luxury or off-road capability. Also worth pointing out, the Expedition is offered in 2 lengths. You can get the standard length, or if you want more space, there is the Expedition L that's longer, but the Tremor is only offered in the standard length body style, which of course this is. But all the exterior quirks, the new powertrain, the split tailgate, all that stuff's important, but probably the biggest change to the new Expedition is the interior, which is radically different from the previous model. You look around here and you can see where the biggest change is that they've lowered the position of the steering wheel, and they've actually flattened the steering wheel, so it's flat on top and flat on bottom. It's not even a wheel anymore, it's sort of a rectangular oval situation, and they've done that to allow for the positioning of a massive new screen on the top of the dashboard over the steering wheel, rather than just looking at a gauge cluster through the upper part of the steering wheel. It is a completely new design in this interior, very different from the previous Expedition, and very screen-focused and screen-based, a very high-tech interior here in the brand new model. But before we get into the screens, let's go through some of the other interesting quirks and features in here, starting with one of the quirkiest quirks. This center console can slide forward or backward with a button. You have a piece here that says slide. You can see 2 buttons, one with an arrow pointing up, one down. You press it and it automatically power slides back so that you can deliver this center console to the rear seat passengers so they can use like the rear part of it a little bit easier. There's cup holders back there and storage. Now, when you slide it all the way back, you can see that it reveals a lower storage compartment where you can put stuff, especially stuff that you want to hide, because you can cover it with that upper center console. You will also see in this lower storage compartment there is an image of a Ford Model T, a little bit of an Easter egg you might not notice, but you see it there reminding you how it all got started. In fact, this car has a few special Easter eggs, although probably the largest is on the windshield. You can see a Ford Expedition printed there on the windshield of the Ford Expedition, just so you know. Anyway, other interesting things in this interior. For one, the ambient lighting. You can see there's a lot of this sort of light purplish ambient lighting throughout. You can actually change the color of this ambient lighting to whatever you want, but I think the most interesting part is that when you open the door, it instantly turns red. I guess to kind of signal to anybody who might be approaching that the door is open, instead of your regular soft lighting color, red, for maximum noticeability. Also interesting in here in the center, you can see Expedition is imprinted
painted into this sort of unusual metal textured area in the center console. It actually looks kind of cool. And directly above that, you have this rather odd feeling material all throughout. It's not flat. It actually has texture, kind of up, down. It's sort of a rough texture material. And it certainly looks and feels rather interesting. Not the usual high-end material you'd expect in a vehicle like this, but I think it works pretty well. Now, speaking of this central area, you can see in here that you have a few important controls here. One is your gear dial. You can twist from park to reverse to neutral to drive. That's your gear lever in this car. There's no big old lever or column shifter. It's just that dial. And you can see some other controls here, your hazard lights, your camera, your stereo volume. Probably the most unusual control here is your gear shifting. You can see plus and minus. This is how you manually shift gears if you go into manual mode for the transmission. You don't do like a up-down motion anywhere. Instead, you just tap a button if you want to downshift or upshift, which takes a little of the drama and the fun out of it. But it can be important to actually use that feature, for instance, on a steep downhill to save the brakes. So it's nice to see that this car has it. Now, I have to say, there is one disappointment in here, one feature that I am surprised not to see in this high-tech interior, and that would be a rear view mirror that's a camera. Basically, all rivals have this feature. It's a camera rear view mirror, so you don't have to look through everything inside the car when you're looking behind you. Now, there is one nifty little feature in here that kind of solves for that. There's a button here on the overhead console. You press that and it drops down the headrest in the third row, which provides you with more visibility. But that's just not the same as seeing what's behind you on a camera screen like you have in the Chevy Tahoe, in the Toyota Sequoia. Disappointing that you don't have that here. But you do have a lot of other screen stuff going on in the new Expedition. Let's start with the upper screen on top of the dashboard. It's separated into three parts. The main part, directly in front of the steering wheel, gives what you'd always get from a gauge cluster. So you can see like your current speed and various other kind of right now important vehicle readouts and information. Over on the right, you can see that's where the map is located, the navigation map, which is always there and pretty much directly in your line of sight, so you can easily look down at it without really taking your eyes off the road. That's pretty cool. The central part of this screen is actually configurable. You can configure it on the lower screen, and you can choose from a wide variety of things, as you can see. Your off-road information, your fuel economy, the current song, music that's playing. You can choose any of that stuff for your third panel in the upper screen. Really nice to see that big screen there with all of that important information directly in or just below your line of sight. And then, of course, there is a second screen, the lower screen, which is also very large and contains your kind of more usual configurable important things. Like you can change your radio station stuff here. You can add a navigation destination, change vehicle settings, all of those things. And this center screen is really a fantastic piece. It is tremendously responsive, very high quality, really easy to use, and it comes with built-in Google Maps and Google Assistant, and of course Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I also like the ease with which you can pull up the camera system in this car. You just tap this button here in the center, the cameras pull up, including a top-down camera, which really helps like an instant camera system. It makes it easier to park this otherwise rather large and a little bit unwieldy vehicle. One thing I don't love about this screen setup is that it completely includes the climate controls, meaning all of your climate controls are now on the screen. You don't have any physical buttons. That is the result of kind of moving things down in this interior to make way for that large upper screen. You just don't have enough space to get the climate controls below the screen and still have room for everything else. So it's integrated into the screen, and that means turning on the heated seats is no longer just a button press. Instead, you got to go into the screen, the heated seat menu, tap, turn it on. It's a couple of steps. Not ideal, could be done better, but that's what they've done. A lot of cars are doing it, and unfortunately, that includes this one. And by the way, since this is the Tremor model, I should discuss Tremor details in the interior, although there aren't really that many. You have gold stitching throughout. On the dashboard, you can see gold stitching here in the center console, gold stitching, the door panel, more gold stitching, the seats have gold stitching, and the seats also have Tremor embroidered into the upper part of the backrest, but otherwise, that's basically it in terms of Tremor details in here. Not really as comprehensive as some of the rivals' off-roady versions. But anyway, next we move on to the back seat in the new Expedition, which is quite roomy. As to be expected for a full-size SUV like this, there is a lot of space. Headroom, hip room, knee room. I got a lot of room back here, and there are some nice convenience features, starting with the charge port situation. On the backs of the front seats, there's a little charge port area where there's 2 separate USB-C ports for each side. So 4 total USB-C ports back here, and you also have a household style port down below, so you could plug in stuff down there, which is fantastic. Love a vehicle with a household style power port in the passenger compartment where you can plug stuff in. It makes things really convenient and easy. Now back here you can also see you have rear seat climate control, which is a nice feature, although pretty much to be expected this type of vehicle at this price point. But you also have heated rear seats, which is a nice feature that you don't get in the Sequoia TRD Pro, probably the closest competitor. And more importantly, you have 3 across seating back here, which is especially unusual. Most rivals in their top trim full-size SUVs only offer captain's chairs in the second row, but here we have 3 across seating. Pretty interesting feature. Some people will want that. They won't be able to find it elsewhere, but you can get it obviously in this Expedition. Now, getting into the third row is almost laughably easy here. You push a button, the seat folds forward. It keeps its shape, which means that if you have a car seat in the seat, you don't have to take it out in order to fold it forward. You just kind of push it up and the seat goes, creating a path to the third row. Now, the third row is relatively roomy, pretty standard with vehicles this size. Not exactly huge, but it's back there, primarily meant for children or maybe some adults on shorter trips. You also have a couple of nice convenience features back there, some cup holders as you can see, and some power ports, which is also nice to have. Makes the third row feel like not quite the penalty box that it can be in some other vehicles. And finally, we move on to the cargo area. Now, I already showed you the trick split tailgate and that cool plastic multi-use panel back here. It's a neat feature of the new Expedition, but there is more back here to discuss. For one thing, the power port situation in back is awesome. You have a 12-volt cigarette lighter style power outlet, a regular household power outlet, and 2 USB-C charger power outlets, all of which are right here next to each other. Whatever device you got, there is power for it back here. It's rare that you see household outlets in vehicles. This one has 2. I love it, but it's especially rare that you see USB-C ports in the cargo area where you wouldn't normally think you might need it. But if you're trying to use this tailgate to its fullest and sit back here and enjoy, those USB-C ports would come in handy. I also love the rear lighting situation. You have this little button that will turn on or off these lights mounted on the inside of the tailgate that can kind of illuminate the cargo area, especially in the dark, make it easier to figure out what's going on back here. Or if you're sitting on the tailgate, those lights will help you see at night. That's also a cool idea. And one other neat thing back here is the folding seat buttons. Sometimes these can get really confusing and convoluted, but here it is very easy. 2L to M to R, that second row left, middle, and right. You press it and that seat folds down. Pretty simple. And then you have 3L, 3R, third row left, third row right, and then the overall third row can fold as one unit as well. Actually, really simple button situation back there. Worth pointing out though, only the third row can fold up and down. The second row just folds down. If you want to fold it back up, you got to go over to the seat to do it yourself. So those are the quirks and features of the new Expedition. Some pretty cool stuff, some neat innovations, but I'm especially interested to get it out on the road and drive it. So let's do it. Time to get behind the wheel. All right, driving the Expedition Tremor. Now, I am an unusual person to review this car. I'm probably the best person because I own the closest competitor for this vehicle as one of my cars, which is the TRD Pro version of the Toyota Sequoia. And I've already talked through a couple of the differences about these two vehicles, but I think from a driving perspective, it's probably where it's the most interesting. So the Expedition is not all new. It's been refreshed as new styling, new tech, new interior, but it has the same basic chassis and the same powertrain as the old model. Despite that, I have to say it feels tidier than the Sequoia. The Sequoia has this sort of rough feel to it, but both the Nissan Armada Pro 4X that I drove and this both have sort of just a tidier feel in terms of road manners and in terms of like going over bumps. The Sequoia is a little harsher, and the Sequoia maybe has a little bit more body roll and bounce than I would expect, and maybe a little bit more than what you get in this car, which seems just a little trimmer, a little calmer. And I'm especially surprised by that because, again, this is not a brand new chassis. This is still the old chassis, but it's clear that they've done a good job kind of refining it to the point where it feels actually pretty nice, and I don't feel like it has some of that, like, the Sequoia feels like it is based on a truck, and to some extent it feels like a truck. This is still like that. All body-on-frame SUVs basically are, but it's less so. In terms of performance, I'm just a really, really big fan of the Sequoia's turbo V6. This obviously also has a turbo V6 with basically the same horsepower, and it's good. It's just as good, probably, but the Sequoia's just seems a little bit more potent and a little bit more eager, which is surprising because I think on paper this actually is the faster vehicle. I think part of the problem is, especially when you're on the freeway, this transmission takes a little bit longer to downshift to get going in terms of like mid-range acceleration. Probably from a stop it does feel faster, but I think that most people driving these vehicles, that's not really where they want their acceleration. They're not like flooring it off a stoplight. They're usually kind of going hard, you know, making a lane change or a rural two-lane pass or something like that. And I feel like it's great. It's excellent. It's totally good, but it maybe doesn't quite have the feel of performance and the feel of like raw power the Sequoia has. That could be because of the sound. The Sequoia just has more of a grunt to it than this car does, and that is definitely true. I will say, in keeping with kind of the tidier like driving and ride quality experience that this vehicle offers compared to other big SUVs, including Sequoia, also including Tahoe, it also seems like it steers and handles a little trimmer. Like it's almost steers and handles like it's a little bit of a smaller vehicle. It doesn't quite have the same float, the same vagueness that I feel like you get with the Tahoe and the Sequoia. However, despite that, it's kind of funny that the new interior here with the steering wheel pushed down and the big screen on the top of the dashboard gives you kind of a bus driver feel. And I think any gains they made in the actual kind of tidier feeling of the driving experience is sort of lost in the design of this interior where you have this low steering wheel and you're sort of sitting up, and it almost seems like you're driving a large truck or a bus, even though the vehicle itself actually doesn't drive like that. It almost gives that perception just because of the design of everything in here. It's almost a bit of a shame. Now, I love this giant screen, and I think they've done a good job with that stuff, but it is a little bit of an odd decision to relocate the steering wheel down, and it does have some negative effects in terms of kind of the way the car feels when you're driving it. One other thing that I'm impressed by with the Tremor specifically, you know, the Sequoia, the off-road version does surrender a little bit of its comfort, specifically because it's the off-road version, and I think they've done a nice job keeping this a little bit calmer and a little bit more comfortable. Now, I will say, the Sequoia is undoubtedly the more capable vehicle off-road. There is no question about that, due to a wide variety of different enhancements and improvements that Toyota makes to the car, like their crawl control and various other really impressive systems. The Sequoia is actually more capable, but I think Ford has probably more correctly identified the truth of this segment, which is that the most people in this segment, they want an off-road vehicle in the sense that maybe they want to take the family out to like tackle a trail on a Saturday, but like they're not doing technical off-roading. And the Sequoia is capable of technical off-roading, but it's probably very unlikely to be used. Now, I actually do use my family SUV Sequoia that way and do some really serious off-roading, and I'm very thankful that it's so capable. But I think for most people, this would suffice, and I think the Sequoia probably sacrifices a little bit too much of its experience to have some of that hardware in there, and this does a better job nailing the midpoint of where most people would be. If this is how the off-road version is, I imagine the tidier on-road models, they're probably even more comfortable. Certainly they have less of kind of the big old burly look to them, is a little bit more appropriate in sort of an urban setting. And I like the powertrain, I like the tech. I think Ford's done an excellent job with this Expedition refresh, redesign, whatever you want to call it. And absent a new Tahoe, and it's been several years since we've had one, I gotta say, I really think that this is probably the very best of these big SUVs at the moment, and it's certainly the one that I would get unless I wanted to do really true crazy off-roading, which is why I still feel the Sequoia is the right choice for me. Most people aren't going to be doing that, and I really think that as a result, this is the one you want. And so that's the new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor. This is a small world. People interested in a large, full-size family SUV with a lot of luxury and equipment that can also capably off-road. But if you're in that world, the Tremor looks like a pretty excellent choice. And it suggests to me the regular Expedition line is also fantastic with its 25 refresh. There's a lot to like about this new Expedition, and now it's time to give the Tremor a DougScore.
And the DougScore is here, 57 out of 100, which puts the Expedition Tremor here against close rivals. The Expedition Tremor is, in my opinion, the best overall vehicle in this full-size off-road SUV segment, even though it loses here to the Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro. The Sequoia over-indexes on fun, and so it wins the weekend categories, and with good reason. It looks the coolest, it's by far the most capable off-road, it sounds boss, but it also compromises greatly on ride quality and interior space in a way the Expedition doesn't. The Expedition Tremor is a great combination of decent off-road capability, more than most families will ever use, plus good tech, nice on-road manners, and an excellent powertrain.